Right, this is the first time I'm using a tool called Vimeo to record something. I hope it works out okay. You're going to be my guinea pigs class. So this is Dr. L, and I want to introduce this week's unit, which is on really focusing on how we as a society, as a global society, can control infectious disease using tools other than vaccines and other than antimicrobial therapy, both of which we will talk about in future weeks. And so I'm talking about things that really largely fall under the topic of sanitation. And so hopefully you can see my screen right now, and you can see that I'm on a CDC, Center for Disease Control website, and it shows some data from the previous century, 1900 to 1996, and it is the crude death rate for infectious disease in the United States. And this is a rate per 100,000 of people in the population per year. And these are the numbers of deaths due to infectious disease. And like the good thing is you can see that from 1900 to 1996, that rate really is plummeting. And so over the course of the last century, humans were really able to start coming up with great tools that were very effective at controlling infectious disease. Well, let's look at some of the annotations in here. So some of those tools were health departments where disease of all sorts was tracked, including infectious disease. And another really important introduction was water treatment. So this arrow marks the first continuous municipal use of chlorine in water in the United States. And so this would be a way to disinfect drinking water, which protects us against a lot of different kinds of pathogens. For example, Vibrio cholerae, which causes cholera disease. This spike here was the 1918 influenza pandemic, and it really drove up not just mortality in the United States, but globally. This is marking the last transmission of plague, which is caused by the bacterium Yersinia pestis, then the first use of penicillin, then the introduction of a vaccine for polio, and then the Vaccination Assistance Act. But like what I want you to notice is that there's two things. One, the advent of antibiotics, which was in 1941, and it's marked right here. And I want you to notice that death due to infectious disease had already been declining before antibiotics were a thing. And similarly, before we started using vaccines, deaths due to infectious disease had been declining. And so that's really important. And it doesn't mean that antibiotics and other antimicrobials aren't important or that vaccines aren't important, but I just want to stress to you the importance of sanitation. The big thing here being drinking water, also, but not marked here, another important thing was the introduction of the pasteurization of milk. A lot of people used to catch tuberculosis from drinking contaminated milk. And so beginning to pasteurize it a lot in the 1950s was a really important public health event. Now, what does all this mean? So in 1900, the 10 leading causes of death as a percentage, the causes of death were, number one was pneumonia, which is a microbial disease. Number two was tuberculosis caused by bacterium. Then diarrhea and enteritis. So these are like GI tract infections that are caused by microbes. And then we get to number four being heart disease, stroke, liver disease, injuries, cancer, senility, and then diphtheria, which is an infectious disease. So number 10 and numbers 1, 2, and 3 are all clearly microbial diseases. In 1997, this had switched. So then the leading cause of disease was heart disease, then cancer, then stroke, chronic lung diseases, which is usually due to workplace exposures, injuries, and then we hit pneumonia and influenza. Then 2 down, HIV, and so on. So we see that by 1997, over that close to 100 years, the leading causes of death in the United States, and this is true globally, really had switched up. So they became more of these chronic diseases, particularly heart disease and cancer. So I'm going to try and change my, show you some, this is from 2021. It's provisional because it takes the CDC a while to get like actual firm numbers. But in 2021, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, infectious disease moved back up as a leading cause of death. So, in the 2020s, heart disease and cancer were still number 1 and 2, but COVID-19 sadly is right behind it, and that's really where we are today. So, infectious disease is an incredibly important cause of death. It's gone up recently due to the COVID-19 pandemic. But we do have lots of tools for dealing with it. And this week's focus is to focus on sanitation. And so you're going to be learning about water treatment, you're going to be learning about cholera, you're going to be learning about pasteurization, you're going to be learning about hand washing, and you're going to be learning about surgical sterility in this week's unit. And all of those are incredibly important ways to stop infectious disease. So with that, I'm going to